What looked like a national title run in year one became 8-5 and 7-6 seasons in the years to follow. What happened?
Part of it, I think, was Lincoln Riley was trying to do everything. And you can't. You can't be a Renaissance man. You can't try to do every single thing. And you need to delegate. You need to have the guys you trust.
Year two, things come off the rails late in the season. And I asked him this, I think, after the bowl game, if maybe there was something missing in the locker room. And he kind of acknowledged that there was. If you align that with his then pretty consistent mantra that we got to get away from relying on the portal, you might connect the dots there and say that that's what he diagnosed was we went too heavy on band-aids and one-year fill-ins, and it didn't work this year. It didn't mesh, and we didn't have that chemistry. The only way we're going to get that is by building from within over time.
They did not try to recruit locally. This was a huge miss, and Chad Bowden has come in and has completely changed that perspective.
This video is about how Lincoln Riley built USC's roster and how now he's having to rebuild it. I wanted to understand what changed because it's rare to see a head coach pivot his strategy and how he builds his roster. So I talked to the two most plugged in USC voices I know. Shotgun Spratling, he's been dialing on the USC beat since I was playing. And Ryan Young, who I used to do a USC podcast with, and he's the dude every week always asking Lincoln the toughest questions in his presser. Here's what they told me about USC's roster pivot. Let's start with the turning point. Lincoln Riley admitted it himself. Year two was the breaking point.
We really kind of pushed to try to go all in with that mentality the second year to supplement it and try to really push it over the top. And it obviously didn't come together in any way the way that we imagined in the second half of that season.
So I asked Ryan and Shotgun their thoughts on year two.
We went too heavy on band-aids and one-year fill-ins.
And obviously the roster needed an infusion of talent to come in. You add Caleb, and that becomes, the North Star. Hey, I'm Jordan Addison. I want to play with Caleb Williams. He becomes a guy that you want to play with. He has that gravity towards him that everyone kind of, is attracted to and wants to go towards it. So made it pretty easy, right? And then the second year you think that, but they never address the needs. You get Barry Alexander and then no one else. Is Barry Alexander going to play four defensive line positions?
Like you said, year two was kind of the pivot mark, and I think that was for a few reasons. One, there was a big hit and miss rate. I think it was maybe harder than he thought to meld a locker room together on the fly like that. In his first year, a lot of the guys they brought in from the portal became the face of the team because everyone was new. And so it really didn't matter if you were coming in from the portal or if you were coming in from high school or if you were on the roster for 3 years, you were essentially all new. So there was nothing to compare it to, and it worked fairly well. Year two, things come off the rails.
Guys came to USC wanting to be a part of the Caleb Williams show. What they found was a defense with no depth and a locker room without a strong culture. Here's what I said to Shotgun about it in our interview. Caleb came in, sweet. I'm going to come in there year two and it's going to be great. But then you build a culture where maybe that guy isn't willing to be a body in the A gap and let someone else make the tackle, or that kind of ripple effect. And it's something that's uniquely a USC thing where you can sell the flash and you can sell Hollywood and you can sell the beaches and the girls and the whole deal. And so guys come out here, and I think all else being equal, you might get a guy who's a little softer than someone who might choose to go to Penn State, by example.
To me, the most impressive thing of that first year, Lincoln Riley, was the culture they built so quickly. With so many new faces, so many pieces coming from different parts, different backgrounds. And so that gave me belief that would be able to carry over. And it just didn't happen. And I don't know if it was the wrong people they brought in or the people they needed to be there graduated, like Travis Dye. I thought he was such a important building block in there for everyone to rally around, a guy coming back home type. And then, Caleb Williams in his second year, he's got all the media attention, everything else. And, he did a ton for his teammates, right? But he's in the penthouse.
So we've established that culture was an issue. Whether they just picked and got the wrong guys or didn't have the money to get the guys they wanted, I don't know. So I asked Ryan and Shotgun.
Lincoln was very defensive about the notion previously that they were losing recruits based on NIL. He flat out said if anyone thinks we're losing recruiting battles because of money, they don't know what's going on inside this building. That was an exact quote. But they weren't winning any of those battles.
USC is not that they're the children of the poor when it comes to NIL. They're in the mix. They may not be Oregon and Ohio State necessarily last year, but they were in the mix, and yet they weren't spending their money the right ways. It felt like they weren't doing a great job with their salary cap. In the last 5 years, so much has shifted, and USC felt slow to every step along the way until the last 6 months.
Fast forward to now, They've flipped multiple Oregon commits. They landed 5-stars like Jakeem Stewart away from Ohio State. Here's the other big shift. For 2 years, USC barely recruited its own backyard.
They did not try to recruit locally. This was a huge miss.
Chad Bowden, the new GM, has come in and been so outspoken with a megaphone that we are going to prioritize Southern California in-state recruiting. This is the best place to recruit from. The talent's so rich here. But neither he nor Lincoln will say it's a shift in strategy, even though it so clearly is. But they won't acknowledge it's a shift. And I wish I had the quote in front of me, but it was a couple years ago. Lincoln was kind of questioned about the lack of in-state recruiting success on one of the signing day press conferences. And he basically said, we took over a failing program and we saw a roster full of California kids, a lot of them that weren't achieving or succeeding. And we can't just pick from our backyard and expect to win. I mean, that's not the exact quote, but that's kind of what he said then. And now it's totally different. And I think he realized last year they were riding pretty high on their 2025 recruiting class. And it was based all on these Florida and Georgia top 100 commits that almost all one by one crumbled and fell apart by June. All decommitted, all went elsewhere.
They didn't have any connections with St. John Bosco and Mater Dei. You can't do that in this day and age with how good those two programs in particular are.
Just the last 2 years, 5 of its 24 signees last year were from California. 5 out of 24. It was 8 out of 23 in 2024. It's already 14 out of 25 in terms of their commits this year. So whether they want to say that they've changed their strategy, they clearly have in both those regards.
It is a good class for sure. And it is a good class at positions that USC really needs. So they've done a really good job of transforming that into saying, we're going to recruit local, we're going to buy local, and we're not shopping from the superstores anymore. And they've churned the narrative there because there were plenty of coaches in Southern California, high school coaches said, we don't talk to Lincoln Riley. We don't talk to USC at big name programs. They stopped by when they first got the job. Hey, how you doing? Haven't seen you since. Those type of things. And they've changed that narrative. And you got to give a ton of credit to what Chad Bowden has done, his little bit of time at USC to help change that narrative.
That all sounds great, right? Sounds like something they so clearly should have been doing all along. So why did it take so long?
Lincoln Riley can't try to be a Renaissance man. Like, he's tried to do that. I'm going to be the offense coordinator. I'm going to be the head coach. That is a tough enough dilemma for coaches. I mean, Kiffin's faced it, Sarkisian, all these guys, they've tried to do both of those, continue to call plays. Now we're at the transfer portal, so you need to be at your computer 24/7, it feels like. Okay, now you got NIL, you need to negotiate these deals. They brought in Dave Emmerich, previously to be basically the director of player personnel. Hey, what do you need? I can help out, that type of thing. Not the guy that should be negotiating contracts. And that's what he ended up being as the general manager. And there were a lot of stories behind the scenes of people not fully trusting USC and their negotiations or whatnot.
It's a whole wing of operation that was otherwise being done by far less people and a lot by the coaching staff.
Lincoln was doing too much, calling plays, trying to increase USC's NIL commitment and overseeing recruiting. Now he's got the resources around him to help delegate. And from the outside, you can see the difference.
So we got to meet with all the assistant coaches on Wednesday, and I happened to get Dennis Simmons one-on-one, receivers coach, and I was asking him a bunch of offbeat questions. And I said, so kind of give me a sense for really what is Chad Bowden's impact? Like how is he impacting this? And he goes, for me, instead of having to watch 30 prospects one week, I'm watching 10. And they're doing so much of the legwork, so much of the pre-work that when I go to talk to a recruit now, I don't have to start at zero and spend our time getting through all the basics. Chad and his staff have already talked to this kid and his family a dozen times and know everything we need to know. And I can come in and build a relationship and start 10 miles further than where I would have previously. And Lincoln mentioned this too, just freeing up the coaches to coach.
So they've invested in culture, they've invested in the California guys. So what else is being done?
There was always top end talent, but that talent was always at the skill positions. It was always in the flashy positions. And it almost seemed like a bonus when a guy like Austin Jackson kind of broke out and suddenly we have a first round offensive lineman. Now you look in the trenches and you can see the investment they've made there, especially on the defensive line. It is night and day to me in terms of depth and size.
It has the makings and the looks of a roster that is much more well-defined and well-stacked depth-wise versus having Caleb Williams and you have the best player in the nation, but you don't have anybody on the defensive line, so your offensive line is porous. It doesn't come together. The mesh of 3 different transfers coming in and you put them at different spots that was weird.
Ryan gave a great example when we were chatting. In year 2, transfer Bear Alexander was the plan to save the entire defense. In year 4, Jamal Jarrett is another big-time D-line transfer from Georgia. But the thing is, he might not even start. And it's an example of how much things have changed, at least on paper. So why does this matter? Has the vibe around USC changed?
You see in the fact that they're able to get not just commits, but high-profile players out to Los Angeles multiple times during the spring. That stands out. The that you're getting guys for unofficial visits, not the official visit, but for unofficial visits multiple times in the spring, I think is really big and shows how far they've come in this last couple of years.
They have 6 OL commits right now. 4 4-star offensive tackles committed in that group. We didn't see a class like that at all during the latter years of Clay Helton's tenure at all during Lincoln. They got 1 top 250 offensive lineman. That was like a massive win. They finally got one of those guys. And now they're stockpiling them. Had a decent class last year, have an even better class coming in this year. And just the entire foundation of the program being built from inside out more than ever before, it seems, at least in recent memory, is the biggest difference I noticed.
USC fans wanted Lincoln Riley to learn from year 2. And the signs say he and the program around him have. They have a deeper team, a better NIL strategy and more resources, a renewed focus on California. Now it's time to see if this actually wins games on Saturdays. Hey, if you like this video, check out the video on the very next frame that's specifically recommended for you. And maybe like this video and subscribe to the channel while you're at it. Thanks, guys.